What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Queer Collective podcast. My name is Karbon.
And I'm Emily, and I'm just glad that you completed the whole sentence this time. In the last couple of podcasts, it was like you were trying out some new things. But welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be back, honestly. I feel welcomed here.
Oh, I love that. I love fostering safe spaces for you.
I feel safe.
So before we jump into this podcast today, I want to give everyone a bit of a content warning because the topic that we're going to be talking about today is definitely triggering for some people. I can say that it's been like triggering for me in the past. So today we're going to be talking about sexual assault. I'm going to be sharing my own experiences with sexual assault. And we are going to be talking about how society and our culture really like fosters that, and talking about the Me Too movement as well. So you've been warned. I hope you do stick around, though. This is a really important conversation and something that is going to be hard for me to share, but I've really been feeling like I should share for a while. So, yeah.
So can I ask you, before we start, what even made you want to share in the first place?
Yeah, so kind of, I guess the stories that I'm going to be sharing today are ones that Karbon hasn't even heard, and I haven't really shared with anyone else, to be honest. Because like I felt like sort of feelings of shame around it. And I also felt like my stories weren't necessarily valid because they didn't include like physical, like aggravated assault, I guess. It was just sexual assault. But now that I understand that sexual assault isn't physical attack. The actual definition of like sexual assault is if someone had kissed you, fondled you, had vaginal, anal, or oral sex with you without your consent, and there's no sign of physical or injury or abuse is required to charge someone with sexual assault. But if it gets aggressive, it's considered aggravated sexual assault. So I didn't really know that, and I've just been kind of like struggling with, I guess, the consequences of what I went through on my own, and really have been like dealing with that, how that shows up in my life now. But recently I listened to a podcast that I would definitely highly recommend. It's called In the Know, N-O. And it was like presented by Radiolab, but this girl did a 3-part series talking about her own experience with sexual assault and consent, and was just very, very candid about it. And she has very similar experiences to me, and I'm sure almost every woman out there. And it felt very relatable, and it felt really nice to hear her actually talk about it, and it made me want to talk about it.
Well, I think that you're extremely brave for even wanting to talk about it.
#brave.
But for real, because these kinds of things, these kinds of conversations often don't get the attention that they deserve. They get discredited, they get tossed aside. And yeah, I'm very proud of you for even beginning the conversation. One thing that I want to mention is that when you say like just sexual assault, not aggravated, is just not okay. Let's not refer to it as just something, because the trauma behind these kinds of acts is very real. Mm-hmm. But without further ado, I don't really want to impede you in what you have to say.
It's okay. So thanks for validating my feelings. So, like many other women, most likely, I think the way that society frames women as sexual objects since we're very young, which is something that we talked about in our dress code video, talking about how women's bodies are just instantly sexualized from the second that they hit puberty. And I think that gives us, and it definitely gave me, a very complicated relationship with knowing that I can say no, and knowing that there is more value to me aside from what I can offer people sexually, you know? And I do really wish that someone had told me that when I was younger, and someone had told me that I can say no, without losing friends or without people thinking badly of me, I guess, like that person disliking me afterwards. That was like really my biggest fear growing up, is like I felt very insecure and I really wanted to be liked. So when I was in a sexual situation with someone, even if I was saying no and they started like coercing me into doing something, I would feel bad and I didn't want them to never talk to me again or something, or to dislike me or to turn people against me or something. So I would just go with it, and it ended up definitely being very traumatic for me and leading to a lot of my social anxiety that happened down the road. But I'll definitely get into that. I guess, want to go through my stories like in a kind of like candid storytelling kind of way, and then get into like the effects of that and kind of what was going on in my mind. But hopefully someone can relate to this and it's not just like weird.
I don't think it's weird at all. But I do want to ask, why did you feel bad for wanting to say no?
I think it's what a lot of men use to get what they want, is that kind of guilt trip, like, oh, you're going to give me blue balls, like that sort of thing, making that seem like it's like they're going to be in so much pain.
Like it's a medical condition or something.
Exactly. Like what the F even is that?
I still don't know.
Does it even exist? I don't know. Go masturbate in the bathroom. I don't care. F you. Now that I think back on it, I wish I was there to like give me advice, because no one did.
Right. Yeah. And that's really important, the whole part about giving young girls actual advice, and not just young girls, but everybody who's young, on how to treat each other, with consent. So I'm really glad that we're getting into this topic, but I would definitely like to hear the story behind it and how you came to be where you are now, basically.
Yeah. So I guess kind of what framed this, aside from like dress codes and all the societal things, is like my first sexual experience happened when I was like 12 or 13, and it was kind of like unknowingly almost. So
that's very young.
Yeah. So throw it back to 2010. I'm pretty sure like a Kesha song was trending at this point.
2010?
To set the mood for you. I think it was like blah, blah, blah. And Nelly, like something about a dream. So that was the energy. That was the mood. I was doing extracurriculars as a 12 or 13-year-old does. I was on a snowboard cross team, and it was like out of Glen Eden, which is the tiniest hill in Milton, Ontario. But I would be there, and it was like a group of 10 of us who were a snowboard team. And I liked this boy on it who was in grade 9 and I was in grade 8. And at the end of one of our like training days or whatever, he asked me if I wanted to go for like an extra lap up the, what's it called? Just
the hill?
Like down the hill. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, sure. You're really cute. I like you. I definitely want to do that. So we went up the chairlift, and we were going down one of the runs, and he was in front of me, and he randomly pulled off into the woods, and I was like, what? And I kind of just like followed him. I was like, what the hell? And when I got into the woods, he had his pants off and his dick out. And I was just like shocked and cold and confused. It's the middle of winter. And he told me, like, basically just instructed me to suck his dick. And I'm like fucking 12. And I was so confused and just like kind of in shock. And then he finished. And I just felt like so dirty and confused, and like I had no idea about like anything really sexual at that point in my life. Like I hadn't watched porn or anything, like I was 12.
Yeah.
And my mom was waiting for me in the parking lot, and I went down and I was just like almost crying. And I like sat there, and it was so, she's like, how was it? And you're just like, good, it was great. And then we were driving home, and I just like felt disgusting.
Yeah.
And yeah. And that, I guess, is kind of the first experience that sort of like set the stage for high school, which would make me feel like, sorry, I need 1 second.
That's okay. This is like an extremely heavy topic to talk about.
Okay, so your girl has cried already.
Hey,
I'm
this
gonna
is okay, by the
I'm gonna
way.
mask my emotions with comedy so I don't keep crying and I can continue talking.
Can I just say before we continue that your feelings towards just this first experience that we've covered are extremely valid. And I think so incredibly important for anybody who's watching or listening that's younger, that is also facing the confusion, the guilt, the trauma. They need to know, first of all, that they're not alone. And second of all, that just because someone doesn't assault you doesn't mean it wasn't forced. And it doesn't mean that you gave consent.
Yeah.
In that scenario, the sad thing is that a judge, some old white judge, man, by the way, in a court, would probably deem that as consensual.
Yeah.
When it isn't. And it's not okay. And that's why we need to teach our children how to treat people.
Yeah. And I think at that point, like, I was so young, man. Like, I didn't even know what I was doing. Like, that's why I was so freaking, like, I didn't even say no. I didn't know what I was doing, you know? It was that confusing for me. I guess that's what made it so strange. But that's kind of one of the reasons why I think our sex ed courses in public schools, in all schools really, should be a lot better in talking about consent, because I know that this happens to a lot more people than just me, and oftentimes by family members, which is like even scarier. So that kind of set the stage for how I would feel about myself going into high school. Like, that being my first experience really with a boy that I thought was cute made me think that that's the only thing that men want from me. And it really made me, like, affirmed my view of myself as just like a sexual object. And that's like really the only value that I have to offer people. And that's the only way that people are going to like me, is my mindset at that time. So I like go into grade 9. It's like a brand new setting, and I'm obviously, like, I don't know, I have like an eating disorder at this time. I'm feeling very like depressed, and I just really want people to like me. I feel very insecure. I made some new friends, and they like invited me to go drinking at a park. We would do this a lot, like steal my friends' parents' alcohol.
What grade is this again?
Grade 9.
Grade 9. One year later?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. By the end of high school, her entire parents' liquor cabinet was just water.
You like replaced all the contents in the bottles with just water? What if some of it was like whiskey? Then
It was all.
Would you like replace
kinds.
it with like iced tea or something, or still water?
I don't know, man. I can't remember anymore. But we would just go drink in the parks, and like that part was fun. But there was this guy who asked me, like, do you want to go on a walk? And I was like, sure, yeah, why not? I'm drunk, you know, like, whatever. Right. I don't assume you're gonna do anything bad to me. I didn't have any like assumption of what was gonna happen. And then we're walking over, and he just like sits down behind this bush, and I'm like, what are you doing? And he was like come sit next to me. I was like, oh, I think I want to go hang out with everyone else. Like, I don't really want to stay here. Like, I want to be where their fun is.
Yeah, you don't want to be in the bush.
No, what the fuck are you doing? Once again, he like whips his dick out, and like I keep saying no, and then that's kind of where the coercion piece comes in, where just like makes me feel bad for him, you know? And I'm like very drunk. And
what kind of things did he say to guilt trip you?
I can't fully remember at this point. It was like so long ago now. He just like coerced me into doing it, and I sucked his dick. But the worst part about it was, like I said, the reason that I said yes and didn't just like walk away is because I felt very insecure about myself, and I wanted to be liked. Going into like grade 9 for the first time is scary. You want to find a place to fit in. And when I got to school the next day, it was basically like the exact opposite thing had happened. I walked in and that guy and his friends were all standing in a circle at like the front entranceway. And they're all like laughing really hard. And then I walk past, they all get really quiet. And I realized later that he had basically told everyone in the whole freaking school that I sucked his dick. And this was like the beginning of grade 9. And it just kind of like framed my whole high school experience as like people thinking that I'm just a slut. And that's like the only thing to me. And I'm pretty sure that's why so many of the other situations ended up happening, because guys thought that they could just do that to me because of the way other guys were talking about me, you know, and that's why like it happened so much. At least I think so.
So why do you think that there's this absurdly insane environment where guys feel like they can A, treat women like objects, B, spread false rumors, and then C, like invite the rumors and pamper the rumors and be like, yeah, that's great, I want that?
I think what it is, honestly, is men not being like, or boys not being raised right, watching porn and thinking that like that's the way that you treat women, and not learning about consent, and it just being something to show off, like I got my dick sucked, you know, it's like something that you want to tell your friends because you seem cool, like you're the first person to get that.
Nobody's going, young boys going around screaming like, I respect women.
I hope they are now.
Like, what is wrong with this? Like, obviously we cultivated it, like as a people, as a society, we cultivated this culture where like boys are looking for sexual pleasure from women, and that's it. They're not looking to respect women. They're not looking to, you know, make sure that everybody has consent. They're not looking to see what they want. They're just looking to get what the boys want. And I get very angry by that, but I'll let you continue.
Thanks. It's like, it's very upsetting, and that's why like I want to, I guess, advocate against it. And I hope that it's cool now, and that grade 9 boys are walking around being like, I respect women. Like, I hope that's how you get laid now.
I hope so as well. I really do. And I've seen like a few pictures here and there that give me some hope. Like, for example, there was this, it was like in the news, there's this high school, and I'm sure this happens in every high school, which is the sad part, but this one high school in particular, I believe in California, but don't quote me on that, started a protest against the young men who literally raped young women in high school, that were still allowed by the principal to go to prom, enjoy their best lives, not at all get in trouble. They're not suspended. They're not kicked out of school. Nothing. They just get to go to prom and enjoy it. And these kids literally organized themselves in a high school setting, went to prom, literally in their prom dresses, prom suits, etc., but didn't actually attend prom. They stood outside, and for every person that would come in, they held the signs that say, rapists are not welcome at our school, and rapists do not deserve prom. And there were both young boys and young girls in that group. So it kind of gave me some hope that things are starting to change around. We're starting to see some good in this world, and some good change in our future men. But obviously this problem still persists.
Yeah. And I really hope, like, if there is anyone sort of in high school, like a young person listening to this, watch to the end. I do want to share what I learned and what I wish was told to me, that I hope helps. You know? There's a lot I wish I could tell a younger me. And that's why anytime I like think of my inner child, it does make me sad. For some reason, I'm drinking Red Bull while I do this. I'm like crying and like amped.
You're just, it's just like, I'm a disaster.
A lot of emotions. So there was I guess like after that first experience, there were, I don't know, I think I kind of just felt like that was the only thing that I had to offer. Of course, I didn't really learn anything about my own pleasure, you know, like all of these sexual encounters were always very one-sided, and that's like, even when they were consensual, kind of like going forward until my next story, they were never like reciprocal, you know, like none of them actually cared to.
That's huge. That's
hook it
huge.
up in return.
Especially at that time in high school, especially. I don't really know what high school is like now. Again, I hope that it's better, but it could be more of the same. Yeah. So I'm glad we're talking about this. But I do remember even in something like sex ed class, for example, what I learned in sex ed class was pretty much the penis goes in the vagina, you have sex, and there's a baby. Yeah. They didn't teach anything about women's pleasure.
No, nothing.
They didn't teach anything about consent. None of that. They just said penis goes in the vagina, sometimes a baby comes out, boom, sex ed, you're good to go.
Yeah.
And it was just like, this is demonstrably false and not
That's
helpful
all that
at all.
is. That's it.
That's it, right? Just like that goes in there. That's it. That's all that it is. Great.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So the next time that I guess like a very bad experience happened to me was I was at my house. This was kind of flash forward to, I guess, like grade 11 is when the next few stories happen. And this is at a time where my mom is just kind of like always at her boyfriend's house in Mississauga. So the house is always empty and I'm just like always having like parties and friends over. And
lit.
Yeah, it was fun. And I had like 10 people over, and then this guy who I had like never seen in a sexual way, like up until that point we were just friends, like I have no clue where this even came from, but he was like, oh, like come downstairs, help me like grab this thing. And I'm like, oh, okay, like it's my house, I should help you grab that thing from downstairs, you know?
Right.
It was like a keyboard or something. So I go down, and then I don't know what's with dudes and just like whipping their pants off, but
okay, we gotta stop that.
What the hell, man?
If you're a dude, don't just whip out your dick, okay?
What is that?
First of all, ask. Is this like, ask. Yeah. Don't just, like, don't do that.
Yeah. But I'm actually proud of myself in this scenario.
Okay,
so
do tell.
Wait.
Oh, I'm waiting.
So I get down the stairs, and his D is just out, and I'm like, what? And I was like, oh no, what's happening here? I think we should just grab the keyboard and go back upstairs. He was like, oh, like no, like come over here, and like literally grabbing my hand and like putting it on his dick. And I'm like, what? And I like half did it for a second, and then I was like, no, like what is happening here? I want to go outside upstairs. And he was like even really like bringing me back, like physically like pulling me back to him, and I was like, no. I went upstairs, and I was like very, very flustered by the whole situation, but I am proud of myself for like really walking away. But that was intense. But after that situation, he did apologize, so that's nice. I've never received apology before, so he apologized, and
that's the only one that apologized.
And honestly, I think the only reason he apologized is because I said no. You know, if I said yes, and
he probably would have told his friends and spread rumors in school, et cetera, et cetera.
In his mind, he would have thought it was like consensual, you know?
Right.
Because I did it. I didn't walk away and say no, and like he didn't get physical about it.
Let's make something very clear. If you just pull your pants down and whip out your D, that's not consent.
No.
When you grab a girl's hand to put it on your D, that's not consent. Yeah. When you grab physically are pushing them into like a place where you're going to try to do that, that's not consent. Okay? It just isn't.
None of it's consent. Anything that I'm saying in this podcast, you can just assume not consent.
Yeah. And on top of that, if a girl wanted to do that, for example, put her hand on your D, she would have done it. You don't have to take her hand and forcibly put it on there. She would have done it. So if she's not doing it, she doesn't want to do it.
On that note, for any straight men watching this, if you are, I don't really know if you would, but also just like good etiquette, don't shove a woman's head down towards your crotch either.
Yeah,
like even if
don't
you're
do
like
that.
making out and you're like pushing their head down, that like instantly would make me want to walk away from you.
Yeah.
Just in general.
That's really pushing towards your narrative, which is I want my D sucked.
Yeah, so how about you go down on her instead, and then after you make her come, then you may deserve some reciprocal head if she consents.
But it's all with consent. She has to say yes.
Yeah.
And if she says yes to one thing, it also doesn't mean she's saying yes to all of the things.
Very good point.
Yes. So keep going.
Thank you. So the next time that this happens is on my birthday. I had like a really big party at my house, and it was like my 17th birthday, and some of my friends from like another town had come, and they brought some people that like I didn't know either, and they drove from like a while away. So one of the people was sober because they were the designated driver, and I got absolutely obliterated that night. Like I blacked out. I don't remember anything. It was my birthday. I was just like going nuts.
Jeez.
Yeah. And I like puked the whole 9 yards. I was very drunk.
Oh, wow.
So
did you pee your pants?
No. I didn't.
Did you poop your pants?
I'm not that kind of drunk. Excuse me. I was a pukey drunk. Different bodily fluid. So this is an interesting scenario, I guess. It's very different than the other ones. But still in my mind, sexual assault. I, at this point, was a virgin, and I was just like, I guess like drunk and keen to hook up with someone. But at this point I was like so obliterated that I don't know. I asked that sober guy if he wanted to go upstairs, and I was like visibly very, very drunk. And we went upstairs and we had sex. I don't remember it. I believe that I did give consent, but in my head it feels very iffy because of how drunk I was and the fact that he was completely stone cold sober.
Right. So keeping in mind when someone is in that level of drunk and that state, that they have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah. And I don't think someone who's that obliterated can give consent, and it's just a bit weird, and it feels like you're taking advantage of someone when you're sober.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, it's like, especially if you're someone who's sober, it's not like he was also hammered as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, like 2 kids hammer, whoops. Like it wasn't even that. It was someone who's completely sober seeing an opportunity coming from someone who's completely drunk out of their mind. And quite frankly, taking advantage of that.
Yeah, and I definitely don't feel like as upset towards the situation. I know that like I did give consent, but it's just, I think it's an important thing for me to note, I guess, in this podcast, because I don't think it's okay for someone who's sober to be doing something like that with someone who's very drunk. I think it's just something that's important to talk about, but it's not something that makes me as emotional and as upset about the other ones. Like I don't feel quite as wronged in that situation.
I understand why you don't feel quite as wrong, because you asked them to go upstairs and all this different stuff, but at the same time, you should know better. Even though you're justifying it in your head, and I understand why, I think that it is that the responsibility of the sober person to do the right thing. And in that time, he did not do the right thing.
Yeah, I think it just makes me sad in hindsight, because it's like, wow, I don't remember losing my virginity. And for a lot of people, that's kind of like something that they want to make special. And it's like, it is an arbitrary thing. It's like, whatever, I guess. But that is kind of like what makes me sad about it, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think just as a piece of advice is like, for men, women, non-binary people, it doesn't really matter. But if someone's very drunk and they like really want to hook up with you, I think a good response to that is just to be like, I really want to, but you're so drunk right now. Like we should
do
see
that
each
when
other
we're sober if you're actually
in
down.
another capacity. Like if you feel this way later, like I don't want to take advantage of you. And telling someone that you don't want to take advantage of them is a nice thing to say. Yeah. I think I would feel very positively towards that if you told me that.
Yeah. And when you say something like that, by the way, they see, like, that person sees the respect that you're giving them, and they'll probably want to, when they're sober, with consent, and actually be excited for it. Because when you take advantage of someone, that's then you cut it. Like, all ties are cut. They no longer respect you. They no longer want to see you. It goes nowhere after that. And I don't know if young guys these days want it to go somewhere in terms of friendship, relationship, all these different things. But it shouldn't just be like, no, I just want to like have sex and get out and like not at all give a care for that other person. Not to say that you can't just have a one night stand as long as it's consensual. You absolutely can. But again, make sure that it's consensual. If you're sober and they are extremely drunk, you're taking advantage of them. It doesn't matter if you're a girl or a guy or a non-binary person, you still need to be responsible. Yeah. And I think that goes with hookup culture too, is like consent is the most important in hookup culture. Absolutely. I would say, like, if you're having sex with people that you've never met before and you've never been in a sexual scenario with them, you don't know what they like, what they don't like. That's when you should be asking for consent the most. Yeah. You know, and like most frequently, because people can feel good about doing one thing and not good about another. So like continually check in with your partner. And personally, I find it very sexy when someone asks me for consent. So it's not weird to ask people for consent. No, it's actually very sexy.
People like to feel respected and cared for.
Yeah, go figure. People like to feel respected.
I guess like moving on to the next story. This next one was another sort of like bad one. This was either in like the summer of grade 11 or like the summer of grade 12, but I was taking a summer school class, and it was like weirdly fun. I made a lot of friends, and we started like inviting each other to like our separate high school parties because we were all from different schools. And we went to this party that was like in a different random town. We all like drove there together, and it was in like this big field. And we got there, and this one guy that I weirdly like knew through other people, but like he had just followed me on Instagram, and I think he was like fangirling me or something. I don't know. That's kind of where I feel like my reputation was preceding me at that moment, where he was like just wanted something from me.
Oh, I see. That kind of fangirling. Like, I thought for a second you meant like as a compliment. No. Not at all. Okay.
No, he was just like a creepy hockey bro. Yeah, the worst kind of person. So he was like following me around all night. I wasn't really into it. Like, he wasn't an interesting person at all. We weren't like, at this point I was like starting to gain a bit more confidence, I guess, in myself.
That's good.
Yeah. But he just like kept following me around. He was very weirdly persistent. And then I like
That's really creepy.
Yeah. And I like lost my friends somehow. And he like, I think I was walking over to try and get to my friends, and he like interrupted me and was like, come on a walk with me, and like that kind of thing. And I was like, okay. So we're walking, and then somehow he finds this like small little shack thing.
Can I ask why you said yes to the walk?
I felt very like pressured, I guess. And I think there's a fear, like a complicated relationship with saying no. Like, I had a very hard time saying no to people, and I don't know why. I think it was like a lack of confidence, and I don't know, like a fear of what people would, how people would react to the no. I don't know.
Interesting. So you're afraid to say no because it might hurt that person's feelings,
which is stupid.
Yeah. It's like, what about your feelings?
Yeah. Why do I care about what that person thinks?
Yeah.
Is the main part. Why do I give a shit? You're some random dude that I don't even like.
Yeah.
Why am I scared to say no to you?
Exactly.
I don't know where that comes from. That's definitely something I would love to work through in therapy. It's like, why the hell couldn't I say no? I think that's something, like, if you're listening still at this point, I know this is a long podcast episode, but I just have to get it off my chest. But if you're still listening at this point and you experience something similar but have maybe like gotten to the bottom of it, like, why is it so hard for us to say no? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. I really like when people leave like some long-winded, insightful comments.
Yeah,
They're
it's
nice
really
to read.
nice.
Yeah. So yeah, and then we are walking together and he finds this like weird little shack thing. I don't know, like a storage room. I don't fucking know.
Okay.
But we walk into it and he's like basically like trying to make some moves on me, and I was like, not that into it. And I'm like texting my friends, I'm like, SOS, can you please come to this like shack thing and like come get me? Like creepy dude. And so he like keeps making out with me, trying to like make some moves on me and shit, and like just kind of like pushing my hand down to his dick and all that stuff. And then my friends come and knock on the door, and he answers the door, and they're like, hey, is everything okay in here? Like, where's Emily? He was like, oh no, she's fine. And they just left. And
What?
I was panicking for some reason. Like, I don't know why I didn't just get up and leave with them. Like, I felt frozen in that moment, and I don't know why, but I felt stuck to the chair. I was freaking out, and so badly I wanted them to just be like, oh no, I wanted them to make up an excuse and just be like, no, she needs to come with us. You know what I mean? Like, and I thought because I texted them SOS that they would do that, but they didn't, and that's okay. It's not their fault. But
okay. Still, I want to make a point on this, that if your friend's texting you something like that, I don't understand, honestly, genuinely don't understand what would make you think that everything's okay when everything in the text is the opposite of okay. And you're saying like, help, creepy dude.
Yeah.
And then you go and check in, say, hey, is Emily okay? He says, oh, she's fine. Why would you believe that creepy dude that you just labeled as a creepy dude? And I'm not saying like they're bad people or anything like that. I know everybody was in high school and everything's confusing and you just don't know what you're doing. But still, we need to advocate for this and for people like just sticking up for each other.
Yeah.
That's actually, I'm shocked that they were like, okay, we'll leave.
Yeah. I have a lot of like sadness though towards like that part of myself though that couldn't just like get up and walk out. Why couldn't I do that? What was wrong with me at that time that made me like not feel like I could get up?
Well,
I'm just still like, it's still something that like mulls over in my mind, like, why didn't I just get up and leave?
I don't think that you should say what was wrong with me at that time.
Yeah.
Because that's A, not constructive, and B, not fair to you. Especially considering all of the traumatizing things that you had faced up until that point.
Yeah.
It was like another round of, I'm going to do something that I don't want to do.
Yeah.
And I feel like I have to. And I feel like I'm being forced into it. I don't have the answers for you because I'm not a therapist. But I don't want you to blame yourself for that. It isn't a matter of what was wrong with you at that time. Quite frankly, it was a matter of what was wrong with him.
Yeah, thanks. I guess continuing with it. After that happened, I was just in my mind like, fuck. And I definitely felt trapped in that little room, and it kind of felt like a nightmare. Like we were just in this big field in this weird tiny wooden shack, and I'm just like stuck there with this dude that I don't like. And I honestly can't even remember what ended up happening between us. I think my mind kind of erased it. But I remember feeling very, very upset, and I was crying in the car ride home. And the next day at school, I was just like, I was trying not to cry all day.
It wasn't your fault. It wasn't your fault.
I guess it's just like hard looking back on, because like I so desperately wish I could have like changed that because of how much it like impacted me going forward, I still feel it, you know?
I think that a good point to bring up is that we're teaching these young men these things. We're teaching them this. They weren't born feeling like they can disrespect women. They weren't born feeling like they can force women into things that they don't want to do. They had no idea about that when they were born. They were taught that. And that is what we need to change. They were taught these things. Like, these young men were taught to not care about a woman's consent. It's not your fault.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess thinking too, like, if she gives consent to one guy for doing that, then she'll do it with anyone, you know? And that kind of thing is like
false.
So shitty, man. It's so shitty. Creates this like negative narrative around sex, you know, especially for women. It's like, oh, a girl is just a slut if she does it, you know? It's like, it's not the case. And that also kind of messes with a woman's perception of them deserving pleasure, I guess. Is like, you wanting pleasure makes you a slut, you know? It's just,
which is false, first of all.
Yeah.
Second of all, men do it all the time. So if a girl's a slut, then the guy's a slut too.
Yeah.
And third of all, we shouldn't be calling anybody slut.
No.
Just at all. If you enjoy sex, you enjoy sex.
Yeah.
That's what sex is for.
Yeah.
It's to be enjoyed, to make connections, to have pleasure. It's not to be called a slut. It's extremely hypocritical for men to call women sluts, because if a girl has sex, she's a slut. If a guy has sex, he's like
a king.
He's a king. He's the winner. He got it, you know?
Yeah.
What an insane double standard. I have never understood it. Doesn't make sense whatsoever.
Fortunately, I guess after that incident happened, I met my first boyfriend, who was a very lovely person who asked for consent and didn't have sex with me when we first met, when I was very drunk. Even though I said I wanted to, he said, no, you're too drunk.
Good.
And that is what a good person does.
That's what a good person does. That's what should happen every time.
Yeah. And that showed me that I was like worth more than that, and that someone can like me without just liking me for sex, you know? So that was definitely a positive experience. I definitely still harbor like, I guess like fear of men. So yeah.
Well, you were hardly ever shown otherwise.
Yeah.
Which is extremely sad.
Yeah. But the two boyfriends that I guess I did have were two very, very kind people. So nice men do exist. You know, there are still very kind people. Not all men are like this. And I hate the narrative that's like men can't control their sexual desires. Like,
not true.
Women just need to be cautious all the time. Hold your keys between your fingers and protect yourself. Keep yourself covered up. Don't dress like a slut. Like, don't put yourself, like, why are you going up to his bedroom? You know,
it's like, how about we just teach them to control themselves, and we won't have to carry a knife in our purse and put your keys between your fingers and cover up and don't walk alone at night. How about instead of doing all these 20,000 steps
crazy
for just
steps.
Women, how about we just teach men to freaking control themselves? And like you mentioned, there are very, very kind, nice men in the world, and we need more of them is the thing.
Yeah.
It feels lately like it's a scarcity.
Yeah.
What the hell is that?
And everyone has the capacity to be a nice, caring person who asks for consent. So this isn't something crazy, you know? It's something that can be taught. And it's crazy. Just because they had sisters or good mothers who actually taught them about it, you know? And sadly, not everyone has that, and our education system definitely fails us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So my last story I want to tell is kind of a good one where I stood up for myself because being in a relationship with them and I guess like maturing and realizing what my worth was allowed me for the first time to say no and leave. So that felt good. And I'm going to tell you that story.
Do tell.
So this was in, I think, like my second year of college. And I was like single for the first time in a long while. And I was kind of just like scrolling through Tinder and I found this cute guy. I don't know. He looked kind of like a bit like trash, but I don't know.
Is that your definition of a cute guy? Just trash?
I don't know. He looked like a drug addict, but like kind of hot. You know when a drug addict's like, I don't know how to explain this. But whatever.
Okay, go on.
So we went on a date and already when we were like out at a restaurant, he was acting super weird. I like told him that I was on ADHD medication and he was like, sell them to me or like just give them to me so I can sell them.
So the drug addict vibe was definitely prominent.
Yeah. And
I see where you get it now.
He was trying to like scam me out of them or something. Like he didn't want to pay me for them, but he wanted to sell them.
What?
It was like
sell them to me, but I won't pay you.
It was super weird. It was super weird.
Okay.
So we went to his house and like at this point in time, I was just like feeling like sex positive. Like I wanted to hook up with him. I was like, whatever, let's go to your house. And so we went there and then he's just been like acting super weird and pretentious the whole time. Like we were watching movies or listening to music or something and he was like, he probably wouldn't know this band, like just being
okay, let's
gross.
Pause there for a second because after seeing all of his behavior you still wanted to hook up with him.
No, these things were slowly kicking in and I'm like
Yikes.
Yeah. So I guess we were like cuddling, watching a movie and like a little bit making out, but then like it escalated and I told him, I was like, please wear a condom. What the hell are you doing? And he was trying to do that like coercion thing where it's like, no, like it feels so much better, blah, 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 blah.
Oh my God.
That stupid shit. And I'm like,
hate that.
I just met you and you're kind of, you don't look the most sanitary.
Fair point.
Like, not into it. And he started off by wearing it. And then I noticed he was trying to slip it off without me noticing.
What?
Which is so rapey and creepy.
Extremely.
Yeah. So I stood up and I was like, I am not okay with this. What the fuck are you doing? And I just like got up, grabbed my shit and I left his house and he was like shocked.
Wow.
I guess. And I walked away and I was like walking away and I was kind of crying and shaking because I was like, whoa, I did that.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know, when you just,
I know that feeling. Yeah. When you do something that you're really proud of, but it also took a lot to get there. And you were like, I did it, but also like I'm scared, but also I'm excited and I don't know. And my hands are shaking and my voice, I can't speak and my eyes are watering.
Yeah.
I understand that feeling for different reasons, but the feeling, I understand it.
Yeah. The next day after, I sent him a very strongly worded text message educating him on consent. And I wish I still had the message with me right now, but it was like ages ago now. Because it was a good message.
Yeah. Do you have any like little snippets from your memory of like maybe even like the overall theme of the message, not necessarily specific sentences?
I think it was just me sort of telling him off and telling him how uncomfortable he made me and how what he did was rape. And it's very, very creepy to take off a condom without consent and try and like sneak that. It's like very scary and uncomfortable. I basically just told him all the reasons why it's wrong and like how he made me feel and everything, and just like told him right off. And then his response back to me was basically like, oh my God, I'm sorry. You're the first person I hooked up with since like my ex-girlfriend, and she was always okay with it. I was like, ew. Just because your ex-girlfriend was okay with you being
also, like, was
creep.
she okay with it?
okay, yeah, it's like, what was she okay with? Like, you guys having sex without a condom on, or you sneaking your condom off?
Yeah,
because
right.
that's gross and creepy. And yeah, so I had some strong words to say back to him again. I was like, I feel sorry for your girlfriend, for your ex-girlfriend, and for your next girlfriend. And then I like didn't respond.
Yes.
Yeah.
Snaps, snap, snap, snap.
Yeah. So that's kind of all of my experiences. There were obviously some other sort of like iffy situations where I didn't really enjoy it, but those were like the main ones that definitely stick out in my mind. I definitely feel like I want to touch on how this has like continued to impact me, because I feel like that's important for people watching to understand, and to understand why it's really important to ask for consent, because it doesn't just make someone feel like crap in the moment. It is something that really sticks with them. So I think sort of throughout this, I guess I've touched on how it impacted me all the way through. I think from one experience to the next, it like kept escalating, like the things that I was feeling inside. And all the way back to that first situation, that definitely like set the stage and made me, I guess, not feel like I could say no, and made me feel like that was like my only role. And that's why these things I feel kept happening to me, you know? So I guess that was the consequence of that first one, but now the lasting impacts of all of them are, for a while and still now, anytime that I guess I would hook up with a guy, I would feel fear and anxiety, and I would kind of like have flashbacks, I guess, to it. And it would like freak me out in the middle of sex and just like really scare me. And I definitely like, I hold that trauma all the time. It definitely messed with like my self-worth, obviously. I also think that I would have really considered myself more bisexual if it weren't necessarily for these situations, but they made me feel a very strong fear, and for a while like a hatred towards men. But I definitely still feel fear towards men that I don't know, that are giving me attention, you know, in kind of like a sexual way. Like, I feel instantly scared of these people, whereas some of my friends would be like, why are you being so rude to that person? Like, why are you so scared? It's like, sometimes they just don't understand.
They don't get it. It's because they don't understand everything that you've been through. Instead of saying like, why are you so rude to that person? Maybe just start asking, what made you feel this way?
Yeah.
What happened that made you feel this way?
And to be honest, I want to change this whole narrative that like I owe some random stranger who's like just chatting me up kindness and like a smile. Like, I don't freaking owe you that, you know? I don't owe you shit all. And that's why, though, I just feel so much comfortable dating women and having sex with women, because I have never been in a scenario with a woman where they did not ask me for consent, where things were not consensual. And I feel so much safer, you know? I really, really do. There's such a greater emphasis on each other's pleasure and making sure both parties are enjoying the sex.
That's extremely sad that the majority of your interactions and experiences with men has been full of fear and trauma, guilt, among many other different emotions, versus your experiences with women feeling very safe and feeling heard and feeling pleasure. That is huge.
Yeah. But I think that's why switching and like my first time really being with a woman felt so intense and exciting, because for the first time I felt seen and respected, and I felt like I could really be myself, you know? So that's why I was like, this is a bajillion times better than being with a man. I'm a lesbian, you know? And that's why it's like, I don't know really what my sexuality is. There's definitely like, that's layered with a lot of trauma. That's why I like to just call myself queer. Who knows? Because I can't, maybe now I can just show someone this like hour-long podcast when they ask me what's my sexuality. Here, let me just show you all my trauma.
Yeah. And so I really can't with the whole, I maybe bought you dinner, I smiled, I complimented you on your hair, I deserve sex. Yeah. I cannot with that. Like, no, you don't. Nobody owes you anything. Nobody owes you anything.
Yeah.
You have to ask for consent, and you have to earn respect, and you have to earn trust. It's not given. And we need to stop treating women like they're objects. We need to stop treating women like they only have one thing to offer. It is not a matter of, like they teach you in sex ed class, at least when I was in high school, penis goes in vagina, that's it. That genuinely makes young girls feel like that's what they gotta do. That's what they're good for. And that's so messed up, man.
Yeah.
That's so messed up. And it's makes me so sad that those were all of your, not all, but majority of your experiences with men. And I'm sure that that's also the case for many, many other women. There is this inherent pressure that you feel when you're with a guy versus when you're with a girl. When I was with a guy, I always felt the pressure to have sex because I knew that's what they wanted.
Yeah.
Even though they didn't force me into it.
Yeah.
However, any time that I've been with a girl, I always feel so comfortable to just say no.
Yeah, me too. Even
and
in
they've
the
always
middle
respected it.
Even in the middle of it, after we like keep going. But there's this weird pressure where it's like, if you've been making out with a guy and their dick's hard or something, you have to keep going because it's like, oh, now we feel bad for them. You know?
Or like
so
if you're in the middle of it, you're not allowed to stop. You have to see it through to the end.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me. Like you can literally you can stop at any time, and we need for other women to know that you can stop, and we need for men to know that you can stop.
I don't know. I think there's still a lot that I haven't really unpacked with this because, like I said earlier, like anytime I think about my inner child, like I just start crying, you know? I feel like so much compassion for, like, I guess like a younger me. Like it makes me so sad to think about her. And to like think about how like worthless I felt. And like how worthless all of those situations made me feel. And like how much I just needed some advice and guidance, you know? And it's just like that didn't exist for me. And that makes me really sad. I really hope to be that for someone. And I hope that this conversation can kind of change that. But one thing I will say, just because of a lot of the language around sexual assault is talking about court cases, and personally I don't feel very much anger and resentment towards the specific people who were involved in these stories because I know that they went through the same sexual education that I did.
Yep.
I don't think necessarily that they knew better. And it feels freaking horrible that I had to go through that, but I don't hold it against them. But I do hope perhaps if they're watching this, or if someone who is close to the story who's watching this, it's just like do better, you know?
Yeah.
I hope that you have been doing better since then, because it's been a long time, and there has been a lot more conversation around it, especially like with the Me Too movement and people really discussing consent. I think that has been so important, and that's honestly been like a huge part of my healing journey, is hearing other women talk about their experiences and validating my experience. Because for so long I thought that mine wasn't worth talking about because it wasn't like aggravated sexual assault, but that's not the case.
No, it's definitely not the case. And I'm so proud of your bravery to speak about it when you're literally right in front of a freaking camera unpacking your childhood trauma.
I don't know why I always find it so funny, the word brave.
Do you really?
Because I think of like chubby girls in swimsuits and people being like, you're so brave. It's like, no, it's just me in a goddamn swimsuit. I'm not brave. I'm just taking a beach photo. It's hilarious. But thank you. I appreciate it. Honestly, it was hard to talk about this. I won't lie.
Yeah, and not just anybody would talk about it. So I just really wanted to comment on, yes, your bravery, your chubby girl in a swimsuit bravery.
Because in my heart and in my swimsuit, I am just a chubby girl in a swimsuit. There's definitely more that I could say about this. We initially planned on also talking about the Me Too movement, but this has been a long conversation and it's included some tears and I'm feeling a little bit tired.
That is totally fair.
So I think we're going to kind of end it here. But if you, I guess, want to hear more on this topic and if you could relate to this, then let us know in the comments and we can continue this conversation in another episode.
Yeah. And I also really just want to put out there that, yes, you can comment in the YouTube chat, but if, say, for example, you're listening on the podcast app and there's no comment box, you can send us a DM. Or if you feel like you want to talk about it, but you're not ready to share publicly, you can send us a DM as well. Or you can send us an email, whatever you prefer. Everything, all of the details are in the description below, all of our contacts. So
yeah, and if you feel like you want to reach out to me like individually, if you feel like you can relate and you want to talk about your story, I've never really had someone to talk to about it, so feel free. My DMs are definitely open. My Instagram is EMGIOSK, but it's also
in the description.
Yeah, but also on Queer Collective, it's just me that manages it anyway. So reach out wherever you'd like.
Yeah. So
yeah.
With that all being said, I think we're gonna wrap up here. Please make sure to subscribe and leave a like because it really helps us out with the YouTube algorithm, the almighty YouTube algorithm.
And just show some goddamn love and support for this fat girl in a bikini, okay?
Yeah, and
this was hard and brave. Call me brave.
Very
if you
brave.
got to this point, call me brave in the comments.
Ooh, just type in brave. Or type in chubby girl in a bikini.